Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot-Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy, and in this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server. Let's get All right, welcome in, everybody. We got lost ones in here first, confirmed, written down, noted. And we got Steven here, Dougie Hamilton. Yeah, we will get to some Dougie Hamilton talk today for sure. First off, though, we'll take a quick gander through just a little bit of news today. So Sean Durzi was out of the game today. And don't really have an update. Didn't sound like there was an update given after the game by the coach there. But yeah, came out of the game, and we don't really have anything beyond that. So definitely something to keep your eye on. Yeah, not where we wanted to be for sure. We got word today that Matthew Tkachuk is going to be out for like a week with this illness that he's dealing with. So it's definitely, yeah, not just like a one-game thing, which I think pretty much everybody expected originally. So yeah, unfortunate there, but definitely probably means that your Evan Rodriguez and Anton Lundell streams are a little safer than maybe you thought they were in terms of their deployment. So, yeah, silver lining, I guess, for those people. And what else do we get? We got Linus Ullmark missing the game today. Apparently, he's going to go for further testing on a strain that he's dealing with. That's a little bit terrifying. In the meantime, the Senators played an absolutely wild game today with Los Angeles. That was quite the show for sure. If you caught any of that. And then also we got word out of the Toronto practice today. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is practicing on top power play over Morgan Riley. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. Ekman-Larsson definitely worth a pickup as long as he's there. So that's something to keep an eye on. Matthew Nyes also on that top power play, filling in for John Tavares while he's out. So yeah, definitely some interesting stuff going on around the league. We got Drewski in here saying, let's go. Last one says, it's been a fun start to the season. So many unexpected names popping up. Yeah, I feel like we get that most often at the start of the season, right? We don't know everything before the games get rolling, and we definitely get some new stuff when it does start to happen. Toronto Dave's in here, hashtag 0G, appreciate you. Von Zuli says, wild is an understatement referencing that Kings Sens game. Yeah, that was definitely one for the ages. Last ones. I did. My opponent had Fiala, Clarke, Stützle, and Shabbat against my Laferriere. Yeah, I've got a matchup similar to that where I forget exactly who they had. It's Clarke, Shabbat, Fiala, somebody else. And yeah, I'm like down 65 points on the first 3 games of the day. Yeah, it happens. That was quite the game for sure. But either way, we continue on, and we'll continue on with some puzzling players in this one. So all of these players that I'm going to go through today that you can see on here if you're in here live with me, all these players were submitted by the Apples and Genos Discord server. Link is in the description. You should go check that out. And you can get in whenever I make this call. I make this call usually about midday every Monday, and people write in which puzzling players they want me to talk about. They want me to deep dive on and see what we can see, what we think may happen moving forward with these players. Yeah, that's basically the name of the game, puzzling players. So we'll get into it here with the top one. Gabriel Vilardi, just 1 assist in 3 games, is skating 19 minutes a night. The per 60 numbers not looking so hot under the hood. And the thing is, like, Mark Scheifele doesn't seem to be having any ill effects, right? We've seen him. He had that goal yesterday on Sunday with the goal he pulled at the end of the period, and they won the face-off directly to him, and he just pounded it home. It was a fun one. I always enjoy seeing stuff like that, a little bit unorthodox goal scored there. But either way, I mean, Gabriel Vilardi still getting all the deployments, still on the top power play, still on the top line. Winnipeg has played like pretty well the way they want to play. Don't really see any reason for them to go away from it just yet. Just because he hasn't produced for fantasy is not necessarily a reason for them to go away from what's been working for them. So yeah, I'm fully in camp hold on to Vilardi. I have Vilardi in a 16 team league in my couple division tier 1, and I'm holding on to him even through this week here with the 2 game week. So yeah, that's maybe a little bit deeper of a scenario, and so he's maybe a little bit more valuable in that kind of scenario. But I do truly believe that Vilardi has 30 plus goal potential this year, and so I'm not willing to give up on that just because of a 3 game stretch right at the start of the season. That's just never a bet that I'm going to make. I'm going to go with my priors over 3 games of a season where he's still getting the deployment. It just hasn't quite come through for him yet. I think there's every chance we look at this next week and he's racked up 3 points in the 2 games he has this week, and everybody's moved on and feeling fine. FF Tyler O says, "Where's Adam Oates on this list?" You got to be in the Discord. You got to submit. You got to submit your. What was he? He was an early aughts player, right? 90s and early aughts. Now I got to look it up. Adam Oates. When did he play? He was born in 1962. He started his career in 1985 and finished in 2003, 2004. Wow. That is quite the run for Adam Oates. He's 62 years old today. That makes me feel old. I remember watching Adam Oates a fair bit. All right. Well, now that I've got that a taste in my mouth, let's continue on. Maxim Tsiplikov has a goal in 2 games here. The Islanders will be playing, obviously, later on here tonight against the Avalanche, 9 p.m. Eastern start there. So if you're listening to this the next day, you'll probably have more information about how that game went than I do at this point. But yeah, the early returns have been pretty solid with Siplikov there, averaging over 19 minutes a night in the 2 games here. The individual scoring chances for look good. The on-ice numbers look terrific in these 2 games, so that's really nice. He's been getting the top power play. That's what we want to see. Yeah, everything all together here looks pretty solid for Maxim Tsiplikov in these first 2 games. So, yeah, more definitely sitting up and taking a little bit more notice here. I do think that if you're expecting him to like break out to be like a 70-point player this year, that's probably still a pretty long shot. But I think there may be more here than I originally thought, at least, and I'm kind of sitting up and taking notice a little bit more just because of the early returns here. I think you have to. Let's move on to Drake Batherson. 1 goal, 2 points in his 3 games so far. I believe that would include today's game. Let me just double check that before I perjure myself further. But I'm pretty sure that would include today's games. They've only played 3 games, right? Yeah, that's correct. So yeah, Batherson got in on a little bit of the scoring bonanza in the game today. 16 average time on ice, 16 minutes average time on ice. That's not exactly where we wanted him to be, right? He's definitely had more deployment in years past, and so you would hope that that number comes back up. But that is part of the calculus that you have to go through with the new coach there in Ottawa. Is his priors about all these players is not going to be the same as the previous coach, DJ Smith there. So Travis Green may kind of do his own thing, and you have to adjust once you see what that is. You know, that being said, it has been Batherson up on the top power play, and that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. He's been playing with Josh Norris at even strength and Noah Gregor in this game here today. So that part's not like perfect for sure. You'd rather him be playing there with, you know, Kachuk, Stutzla, even Drew. Yeah, some combination of those guys, obviously, but yeah, more concerned about the even strength ice time than the power play role here. And I think that is a legitimate concern. That will take a bit off the high-end potential of a Drake Batherson, where the last 3 years he's averaged between 18 and 19 minutes time on ice, and now this year the early returns have him more in that 16-minute range. That's of concern. There's no 2 ways about it. So Something to monitor moving forward. There's every chance that these lines get switched around. Something you're going to hear me say a lot as I go through these players is it's early. There are very few games played. Like, stuff is going to change. You're going to hear me say that a lot. So don't don't make any rash decisions based on the early deployment here. Certainly, it's enough to move off of the players that are fringe players to begin with, but it's not something where I'm throwing out players that I think are actually good just because they only got 15 minutes in the last game. You definitely have to realize that this is just a very small sample size in terms of the whole season, and if this sample size occurred anywhere but the beginning of the season, we would not treat it anywhere so religiously as we do at the start. Steve said, my wife is a dental hygienist and worked on Vilardi's teeth cleaning. Confirmed great teeth guy. All right. I don't know if I can draw any perfect parallels for his fantasy usefulness based on the glowing teeth review here. But yeah, I'm sure Blake will have something to say about Gabe Vilardi's teeth in the next episode. So stay tuned for that. Manzuli says, stay calm. Yeah, we have to try to stay calm. It is difficult. I'm not saying that I'm immune to it by any stretch, but yeah, definitely over the years, I think you can do more harm than good by overreacting, especially in a negative way, to players with established roles and established yeah, point projections, established point production over years. Definitely, you can get too excited with moving away from players early in the season based on how it goes. Isaac says, hashtag zero patience. I like that. All right, let's keep going. Kent Johnson, 2 goals, 3 points in 2 games here, averaging almost 20 minutes a night through those 2 games. 77th in shots per 60, 25th in shot attempts per 60. Looks all right there. Not really getting to the dangerous areas with 248th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Again, this is in less than 40 minutes of total time on ice, so take it all with a grain of salt. But definitely, it does seem like Kent Johnson has been prioritized more by Dean Evison than any coach ever has before. He's been on what's been more so the top power play unit, I guess, with Chinakhov, Monahan, and Sillinger. Been playing with Sillinger at even strength as well. And that line got the most ice time in the last game, like by a fair margin. So yeah, interesting stuff there for sure. It does kind of seem like the top six is the Kent Johnson line and the Sean Monahan line. Adam Fantilli, I guess, is not a favorite of Dean Evison just yet. So in the meantime, yeah, Kent Johnson, I'm into it. Obviously, it's kind of like a streamer pick. You pick him up and you hope that it continues for him. But I'm not discounting the possibility that we could see a Kent Johnson breakout. We know that there's a tremendous amount of skill there. Kind of compared him mentally, at least. I don't know if I've ever said it on the pod, to like a Trevor Zegras in some ways. He's always been a bit more flash than substance, at least at the NHL level so far. But maybe Dean Evison is the coach to believe in him, to give him the ice time to work that out and to transition from being a flashy guy to a regular NHL player who could put the puck in the net and facilitate for his line mates as well. Yeah, I want to be in on players who've exhibited a high level of skill and might just need that push, that vote of confidence from their coach to really get things going. So I am in on Kent Johnson. Obviously, if it doesn't work out, if he has 0 points in their 3 games this week, then I'll be back out. Like, I'm not saying that this is the guy for the year or making any such proclamations, but I think you have to sit up and take notice when the production and the deployment are aligning like this. Next up is Jared McCann, 1 goal, 2 assists in 3 games. More importantly, under 16 minutes average time on ice so far. That's got fantasy managers pretty worried. I've seen some people talking about dropping him already. I'm not ready to do that just yet, but I understand the urge. Yeah, it's just not been what we were hoping for. Although I will say, like, 2 points in 3 games. I think like the worst case scenario here for McCann is that he never does get any more ice time. But then we kind of get what we've always gotten with Jared McCann, which is a really efficient player with not a lot of ice time. And I think that'll be fine. Like, I think you'll be okay with the return at that point. Is it what I projected, what I'd hoped for? Probably not. But yeah, he's at 1549 right now. The last 3 years, he's been at 1608, 1620, 1645. So he's a little bit lower than where he's been in previous years. But also, like, there'll be injuries, stuff will happen. He'll get a little bit more ice time throughout the year. I imagine he'll end up in the middle of that once again if the general strategy and the how the coach views him doesn't really change throughout the year. I still think he'll end up right in that same wheelhouse, and he'll probably present pretty similarly in terms of total production as he has the last number of years. The thesis with McCann was always that, he's been held down by a lack of actual time on ice, and that this could be the year with a new coach that he really pops off, that he really gets more ice time, because he is, in my mind, clearly better than all the other players on Seattle, all their other forwards. Hasn't come to fruition yet. Still could. I'm not discounting that possibility yet. And I'm definitely not dropping McCann anywhere. I mean, there's probably some shallow 10-team league or 8-team league where it makes sense to drop Jared McCann, but definitely not in any sort of 12-team or above standard kind of thing. So that's where I'm at with McCann. I'm preaching some patience here on a player that I just think is really talented and can be very efficient even in lower minutes. GG says, hello, Nathaniel. Oh, wow. Using my Christian name there. I know the Canes have only played one game, but is Martin Necas the worst player in hockey history, or am I just going crazy? I don't think Martin Necas is the worst player in history by any stretch, but it is going to be hard for him. Like, the lines came out, I think it was today that we saw updated lines again, and he's still with Kotkaniemi and Roslovic on what I guess is the second line there. I mean, that's just not going to get it done in terms of even strength line mates. It's so hard to overcome players who just aren't on your level, and Necas is clearly better than those guys. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough road to hoe for him there. That's why I was a little bit lower on Necas than both Blake and Josh this year. My projection was a little bit lower, was because I didn't really see, even if like Svechnikov goes down to the second line for a good chunk of the season, there's still probably going to be about half the season where these are Necas's line mates. Roslovic, Kotkaniemi, maybe they move things around. Maybe one of their prospects comes up and gets a higher role, like Drury starts to play really well and he gets a higher role. Jackson Blake, Bradley Nadeau, any of these players could get there and elevate, but Necas really needs somebody to play with, somebody to bounce some pucks off of, and I really don't think that Kotkaniemi and Roslovic are going to carry the water there. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I think that he's a talented enough player that he's worth holding, even if he doesn't. Like, I think he's rosterable in your kind of standard 12-team formats, even without some massive amount of usage. But either way, it is disappointing to see that he's not going to get any any of those top three guys in Svechnikov, Aho, and Jarvis, any exposure to those guys, at least for the moment. I do think that Carolina is a team that moves stuff around throughout the year, so I'm sure he will get some. But yeah, I think the ceiling could be muted there a little bit just because of how those lines may work out for a significant portion of the season. Snorlax is better than Chandler Stevenson. Yeah, I do think Necas is better than Chandler Stevenson. Or was that in reference maybe to Jared McCann? Because, yeah, definitely better than Chandler Stevenson. But Chandler Stevenson did get that contract and did get, like, I forget what it was, 19 or 20 minutes in the game yesterday. So what do I know? Taylor Perot says, I'm going to risk dropping Vilardi tomorrow and pick up again Friday once he's off waivers. All right, you can play the game. I mean, I've played that game before, so I'm not going to fault you for it. But yeah, that's one way to go about it. Wob says, hi, Nate, what's your opinion on Stankoven? I like the player a lot. I think everybody in Dallas is being really held down by the fact that they're so good through the top nine that they just don't have to play any line as a top line. Yeah. I think that everybody's ceiling is just muted there right now. We got Jason Robertson on this list. He's averaging just over 17 and a quarter minutes every night so far, only has the one goal. I really think that that's kind of going to be a little bit of what we have to expect this year. Robertson probably ends up in the 18-minute range. Wyatt Johnston, based on the early returns, probably ends up in the 18, 19-minute range as well. But everybody else is probably going to be between 14 and 16 minutes in that top nine. And it's going to be tough to have sustained fantasy production. Definitely anybody can get hot. Stankoven obviously running hot right now, and that's great. Happy to run with it while it lasts, but also don't think it'll last forever. The Dallas Stars are just kind of too deep for their own good right now, and they know it, and they don't have to play anybody as a true top line, and they probably won't. So that's where I'm at the moment. Steve says, is Byfield having the McCann issue? Yeah, maybe to some extent. I didn't actually see, I'll look it up for a minute. I didn't actually see what the time on ice numbers ended up looking like in this game here. Yeah, they split the time on ice pretty evenly at even strength among the top three lines there. So, yeah, really it's just the bigger concern for Byfield right now is that Laferriere's on the top power play, and Laferriere got a goal today, a couple of goals today, I believe, right? So that's probably not going away anytime soon. That's the bigger concern with Byfield right now is that he's just not getting top power play. So everything or almost everything has to come at even strength. And that's just, it's a tougher spot to produce if you're not getting top power play. So that's the problem with Byfield at the moment. Isaac asked, what do we think about Nyes in a Bangers League? Yeah, I talked about Nyes with Blake on the flagship show. If you haven't checked that out already, it's up on the channel. So definitely go back and get that one. Yeah, I like Nyes a lot. He's practicing on the top power play right now with John Tavares out, getting more minutes than he ever has before. It seems like Berube has really identified Nyes as one of the players he really likes in the early going here, and so I'm in on Nyes. I'm holding Nyes in the Apples and Genos Patron League, which is Bangers Cats situation. The Leafs only have 2 games this week, but I've decided that I'm going to hold him basically at this point, unless, obviously if deployment changes, then things can change, but that's where I'm at the moment. Dirty Deed says, Nate the Great, any thoughts on Caden Gooley? Gooley is probably just one of these guys he's going to be good in your Bangers Cats leagues, but I don't think in most point setups, unless there's like a really extreme Bangers waiting, that he's going to be all that useful. Lane Hudson in the fold probably means that any shot at power play time is probably going out the window for Caden Gooley sooner rather than later. So yeah, you're just hoping on maybe 30 points and a bunch of bangs, like budget Darnell Nurse kind of season. So yeah, that can be useful. I'm not saying it can't be, but it has to be the right type of league for Caden Gooley. Last one says Byfield's getting outplayed by Laferriere, I feel like. Yeah, I don't know if outplayed is necessarily the word I would use, but I mean, for fantasy purposes, it doesn't really matter what it exactly looks like on the ice, the on-ice contributions. It's all about the production, right? And I feel like, yeah, as long as Laferriere's in that spot on the top power play and Byfield isn't, and it's going to be tough for Byfield to produce what we think he may be capable of. CG says better D-man, Jacob Chikrin or Adam Boakfist, 12-man points league. Yeah, Boakfist is really not getting any kind of minutes there. Again, in the game today, he basically got nothing at even strengths, and so that's really hard to rely on. I think that in almost every case, I'm going to go with the guy who has a really established role, top pair defenseman, Jacob Chikrin. Also has that contingent upside. If anything happens to John Carlson, he could be on a top power play. And Jacob Chikrin, I've talked about it before. This is a guy with terrific underlying numbers, always has massive shot production and scoring chance production numbers. And that's what we love here at Apples and Genos. Matt Lauren, thoughts on the Flames? Hot start, Pospisil must add in 16-team Bangers League. The only thing giving me pause there is the Flames only having the 2 games this week. But overall, yeah, I mean, Pospisil is that guy. If you have Pims especially, definitely makes sense. In 16-team, yeah, he can be a difference maker there. I don't know that I truly believe the Flames hot start, but so far they're getting scoring and chance production from all 3 top lines. And that's something they desperately need because they don't really have that true superstar unless you think Huberdeau is back to his old ways, which personally I don't. So, yeah, that's the case on the Flames right now. Obviously, very, very early on here, and we'll get more info as things progress. By the way, Hockey on Prime sucks. Have to sit through ads because you can't leave the app. Ooh, that is rough. I haven't tried watching anything on Prime. It sounds like maybe I shouldn't. Babby Boy says, what should we do with Zibanejad? Who's a great one-for-one trade for him? That's interesting. I haven't really thought that one through too much. Um, yeah, I'd have to think. I'd have to think about that one a little bit. We talked about Carter Verhaeghe in the flagship show yesterday as somebody who hasn't produced yet either. Maybe you can go get Verhaeghe with Barkov out. Maybe the Verhaeghe manager's even more nervous than usual, and you can go get Verhaeghe for Zibanejad. I would absolutely do that in a heartbeat. I'd love to have Verhaeghe over Zibanejad. So, yeah, that's the first name that comes to mind for sure. CG says, thanks, Nate. Best content out there. Appreciate you. Let's get back into it. Jack Hughes, up to 5 games now with only 3 assists, no goals, averaging 20 minutes a night. 84th in shots per 60, which is okay, but definitely not what we've expected from Jack Hughes. 170th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. On ice numbers are better. 26th in Corsi, 4 per 60. 49th in scoring chances, 4 per 60. But yeah, I'm not going to pretend like it's a good start for Jack Hughes. It's definitely not. I have to wonder if he's still easing back from shoulder surgery, right? I'm remembering that correctly. All these injuries seem to run together in my mind after a while, but yeah, I have to wonder if he's still not necessarily feeling the effects, but just not maybe physically all the way up to where he should be. And so sometimes, you get to the level of these elite athletes, and if the body doesn't respond exactly the way they're used to, then the results can sometimes not be there. The margins are pretty slim at this level. Maybe that's where we're at with Jack Hughes. Overall, I'm not worried. If somebody is worried about Jack Hughes and they're looking to trade him, I will absolutely be in there with offers in hand. So, yeah, if anything, it's a buy low on Jack Hughes, in my opinion. Evan Bouchard has 0 points in his first 3 games amidst the Oilers' early slump here, still averaging over 25 minutes. 97th in shots per 60, which I think a lot of people are seeing, but if you dig a little deeper, it doesn't look nearly as bad. 6th in individual shot attempts per 60. 11th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. That's amongst all defensemen. 2nd in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60. 7th in on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. I have zero concerns with Evan Bouchard. If you can buy low on him, absolutely do it. I doubt you can. But I have no concerns whatsoever with Evan Bouchard at the moment. Jake Neighbours, 0 points in 3 games. Another player that Blake and I talked about on the flagship show there yesterday. Underlying numbers are not terrific. The on ice numbers are better. He's still on the top power play in St. Louis alongside their studs. He's still getting decent deployment over 17 minutes. Would love to see that in the 18 range, but 17 minutes will take it. I'm trying to hang on to Jake Neighbours where possible. I think that this could still be a season where he has some kind of a breakout. Maybe it's not here in the early going, but it wouldn't surprise me if he starts cooking here shortly. And I want to be a part of that. Obviously, if you can't wait, you can move on from Jake Neighbours if there's a real priority out there on your waiver wire. If somebody drops Jared McCann, sure, I'd go add Jared McCann over Jake Neighbours. But overall, I'm not super worried just because the first 3 games he hasn't managed to put anything on the scoreboard just yet. Jason Robertson, yeah, I mentioned Dallas, just spreading the wealth, basically. Only has the 1 goal in 3 games. I do think it's going to be a little bit tough to expect 90 plus points again from Robertson. I believe I ended up with him projected at 89 or somewhere right around 90, but not above it. And I think that was probably a bit of a hot take, maybe. I think a lot of people were kind of expecting him to get back up to where he was the season prior. Maybe not all the way there, but definitely higher. I had him at 89.5 points was my final projection. And yeah, it is really just those concerns with the deployment. They don't need to play him. Obviously, throughout the season, there can be injuries, and maybe he gets a little bit more. He gets a little bit more deployment based on some injuries. They can't prioritize the third line, I guess, as much as they have to date. So definitely there's some paths for Robertson to get some more deployment, but I don't know that there's a path to him getting, 19 plus, 20 plus minutes where he's absolutely popping off for 100 plus points. And so that part, it just feels like the ceiling is slipping away from us with Jason Robertson that we were excited about. So yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. His underlying numbers are not looking terrific either, so it's yeah, that part's tough as well. But yeah, overall, I still love the player, but it does really seem like Dallas is committed to just kind of getting through the regular season. They're deep enough to do it. They don't need to run out Robertson and Hintz and Johnston for 20 plus minutes every single night. They just have no need to, so they probably won't. And unfortunately for us in fantasy, that means that their totals will probably be muted for fantasy purposes. All right, let's get back over to some comments. Steve says, Malkin, Zibanejad, Tavares. We talked about Zibanejad a little bit here. Malkin, I feel like Malkin is what he is. I haven't actually checked. We're at the end of the first here. Malkin get any points so far? He's got an assist. Yeah, he's getting something done at least. I don't feel any type of way, honestly, about Evgeny Malkin. It does really feel like he is what he is. He's got the 4 assists so far. That's great. Yeah, I think he'll be like a 25 to 30 goal scorer with around 70 points, 65 to 70 points. That's the most likely scenario. I don't think he has much ceiling above that. He's got some floor below that if things fall off at some point. But so far in the early going, he looks just fine, and he is definitely value where you drafted him. Tavares, obviously dependent a little bit here on the injury, but it's not great to see that he's not been really prioritized in any kind of way by Berube. And yeah, with the amount of love that we've been seeing from Matthew Nyes, I'm starting to feel a little bit queasy about the possibility that Nyes actually takes power play one from Tavares at some point. Um, I never want to ascribe this to clubs, but sometimes I do wonder, John Tavares probably looking at re-signing with the Leafs after this year, if at all possible. Would they kind of stoop so low as to put him on the second power play to kind of artificially hold down his next contract? I don't know. But yeah, maybe there's some there's some narrative crafting for you if you really want to go full conspiracy theory on it. CG says, I know I already asked a question, but I went 0G, have Kemper. Somebody just dropped Jerry. Who's the better keeper? I'm keeping Kemper there. I know today was rough, but yeah, better team, in my opinion, in LA, and better goaltender as well. So yeah, I'm sticking with Kemper there. We'll see how this game against Montreal goes for Jerry here. So far, he's allowed the 1 goal in the game, and he's made, how many saves has he had to make to get there? He's only made 5 saves and allowed 1 goal, so it's not perfect, we will say. But overall, I'm not like super worried about Kemper just based off one bad game. Although I will say I did see the like slap shot from the blue line that just beat him clean over the shoulder, and that was tough to watch. Justin says, when do you think McDavid will dig in? Right now. That's when he'll dig in. Yeah, I have no concerns about McDavid. Lanzuli, what's the deal with Kopitar? Just a hot start. Don't remember him being this good last year. Yeah, in my opinion, it is kind of just a hot start. I'm not really banking in anything additional there. I definitely, it's more evidence that he's not going to cede any ice time to, Byfield or anybody like that anytime soon. So it doesn't seem like he's going away, but I also don't think that he's like exhibiting anything tremendous. He's got a 75% shooting percentage on the season so far. Underlying numbers are nothing to write home about at this point. So yeah, I'm not excited about Kopitar. I would definitely sell high if I had him. Jordan says, hey, Nate, what's thoughts on Buchnevich so far? Would you use him to buy low on Verhaeghe? Yahoo Points League. Yeah, definitely. If you can, I would buy low on Verhaeghe there. I feel like Verhaeghe just has a much better goal scoring potential, which is obviously going to be more beneficial in a Yahoo Points League like yours is. So that would definitely be a spot to buy low on Verhaeghe in my mind. I legitimately like Buchnevich as well. Don't get me wrong. I think he's got 70-point plus potential, could score 30 goals this year. All that could be there for Buchnevich. But if I could lock in Verhaeghe, I absolutely would. Speaking of Leafs power play one, OEL thoughts. Yeah, I did mention it already early on, but yeah, OEL has to be rostered at this point. Thoughts on York? Thinking of dropping for either Wallman or OEL? Yeah, I would definitely drop York for either of those players. Wallman has probably the more secure role, just kind of looking at it right now. But OEL might have a higher higher potential in the shorter term as long as he's on the top power play in Toronto. Obviously, expect that to be a really good spot to put up some points, and he's playing a lot of minutes in the last little bit as well. So, yeah. CG says, thanks, Nate Dogg. Like and subscribe. Y'all support these guys. The best fantasy hockey content available anywhere. I'd love to see that. Thank you for that. Yeah, actually, for everybody watching on YouTube, if you could hit the like button on the video, that does actually help out with the algorithm, as I've been told. So, yeah, if you are enjoying the Puzzling Player stream here tonight, throw a like on it. That does help us out. Mr. C, thanks for talking me off the Kemper ledge. Nate, anytime. Jordan says thanks as well. Any thoughts on Elias Pettersson so far? Nothing too crazy, to be honest. Like, I have never been like the biggest Pettersson guy. I don't know that I've ever actually rostered him in fantasy. The first two games, he's skated 21, 28 on average each night, so that's good. But the shots are definitely not there. The scoring chances are definitely not there in the early going. That part's not great, but again, it's 2 games. I am desperately trying not to overreact to 2 games. So yeah, I had Pettersson for 35 goals and 84 points this year. I think that's low compared to a lot of people. But yeah, I have never been the high guy on Elias Pettersson, so take that for what it's worth. Captain Pie, which of the 3 D-men, York, Wellman, OEL, would you pick in a points league that values peripherals pretty minimally? I'd probably go OEL there in that case. All right, let's get back to the list. We got to talk about Brandt Clarke having himself a day here today. I didn't see the time on ice. So I do want to double check on that. But he had 3 assists. Yeah, he still only skated 17:35 total, 5:06 on the power play, which is obviously where he's able to do a bunch of that damage. I think, were they all power play assists? Let's check this out here. Yeah, all 3 were power play assists. So definitely, like, it's not a bad place to apply your trade. But I don't think you can reliably account for 3 power play assists. The fact that he hasn't been able to get more ice time is perhaps a little bit concerning in this game here. He was 4th on the Kings in ice time. Gavrikov skated 25:48. Edmondson played 22:52. Mikey Anderson played 19:48. And then Clarke was 4th at 15:35 over Burrows and Spence. Yeah, I don't know how much to read into that, quite honestly. But yeah, I would have loved to see this be the game where he steps up to play, 20 minutes in this game, when he's getting that kind of 5 minutes power play time on ice, but it didn't happen. Yeah, it's not great, I will say. Definitely, it seems like he is a bit of a power play assist or bust kind of player. Just so happened that this game was absolutely nuts, and he got 3 of them. So overall, I'm still kind of tepid on Brandt Clarke's potential as long as he's playing these minutes. I love his potential in terms of the long term, in terms of the talent of the player, but obviously we got to have 2 things come together here. He's getting the power play deployment, but he's also got to get a little bit more at even strength before we can really think of him as a huge breakout. At this point, he's still definitely rosterable. Definitely one of the top 48 defensemen in the league for fantasy at the moment, probably higher than that. But yeah, just manage your expectations. I don't think you have to go and send trade offers for Brandt Clarke right away, just because of this one game. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Hoping to see this role grow, but it hasn't quite yet. Justin says, just subscribe. Thank you for that. Thoughts on Ross Colton in a deep league points ad? Yeah, I definitely, if he's available, he should be rostered this week in a lot of leagues. He's got the 4 off nights this week, playing on the top power play. Should be there. Jordan says, I have line rushes tonight. I have Colton on line 1 with Mac and Rantanen. Colton to the moon. That sounds great. I didn't see that one, actually, so that's a new one for me. Yeah, I'd love to see that. Oh, yeah, there it is. Colton with McKinnon and Rantanen. That puts Wood with Middlestat and Ritchie, and Kovalenko down to the 3rd line. Classic. Yeah, I was talking with Blake about it a little bit. Kovalenko looked like a decent waiver wire option because he had been on that top line with McKinnon and Rantanen, but it also felt like one of these players that could just be totally off the top line, and there you go. Have it already in the line rushes. All right. One more. Wob says Colton or Middlestat. I would still go Middlestat. I think the role there is just locked in. He's going to be on the top power play. Um, I should clarify. If it's a bangers league, I think I would go Colton for the hits as well. Um, but yeah, I think Middlestat's role is probably just a little bit more locked in. And Colton could easily just be back to like third line center by the next game. Wouldn't surprise me at all. At all. If it's just for this one game, then I'd take Colton. But if it's for the rest of the week, I'll take Middlestat in a points league that doesn't have any kind of crazy banger waiting. Okay, back to the list. Jonathan Huberdeau, 3 goals, 5 points in 3 games so far, averaging over 18 and a half minutes, which is good stuff. Underlying numbers are nothing to write home about, but they aren't atrocious. Overall, I think Huberdeau is in a hot stretch. He's got some chemistry going at the moment with Pospisil and Mantha. Didn't know that was a possibility, but here we are in the year of our Lord 2024, and it's happening. Overall, I'm not excited about Huberdeau, to be quite honest. There's nothing really here that's just screaming out at me that something has changed. The minutes being higher is definitely better. This definitely gives him like 65 to 70 point potential, where I didn't know if he really had that in him with the kind of deployment he was getting last year. So that part I really do like. Being more prioritized is definitely only going to do good things for his fantasy value. But also, I can't get too excited about a guy who just has not done anything the last couple of years in the current situation that he's in. So yeah, I think he can be valuable in 12-team leagues even with this kind of deployment, but I don't think that we're just seeing like the resurgence of Jonathan Huberdeau and he's going to go off for 100 points again. I don't think that's where we're at just yet. Or will be at any point this year. Yeah, it's just a guy too that doesn't profile all that well for fantasy in general, right? He's more of an assist guy. He's not a guy who gets a lot of shots or a lot of goals, which count more for us in fantasy than the assists do generally. So overall, I just think that Huberdeau is probably looking like a rest of season hold where we weren't sure that that was the case at the start of the season. Next up, Dougie Hamilton has played 5 games now with 0 points to show for it. Average time on ice 23, just over 23 minutes. So he's definitely getting the time on ice. That part is not going away. He's been getting the top power play. That part doesn't seem to be going away either, although Seamus Casey is crushing things as the second power play defenseman there. Underlying stats still look terrific with Dougie Hamilton, 9th in shots per 60, 5th in scoring or in shot attempts per 60, 21st in individual scoring chances for per 60. On ice numbers are great too, 5th in Corsi for per 60, 6th in scoring chances for per 60. Yeah, I guess the only concern I could say is that if we think that Seamus Casey like it suddenly takes over the top power play from Dougie Hamilton, that seems totally crazy to me. But I've seen crazier things happen, I guess. But yeah, in terms of the way that Dougie Hamilton's playing, I have no concerns whatsoever. I think that he's a pretty dominant player for fantasy when the puck's going in. The puck's just not going in right now. If you can make a trade for Dougie Hamilton by low, I would absolutely do it. Captain Pie says, thanks a lot for the advice. How do you feel about Trevor Moore overall, specifically in the points league with lower ratings for peripherals? I don't feel great about Trevor Moore. I don't think he's going to be like, especially in leagues that are closer to a points only format. I mean, he's got 18-19 average time on ice, which is not too shabby, but I still don't think that he's going to do much more than like a 25 season, maybe like a 25 goal, 25 assist, 50 point season. For however much that's valuable in your league, that's what I think of Trevor Moore at the moment. Over to Mikhail Sergachev and Sean Dursey. So Dursey, as I mentioned at the top of this live stream here, did leave the game. There wasn't really an update, so definitely we'll check in on that. It's kind of holding down his average time on ice in this in the sheet here, but definitely him and Sergachev were getting tremendous minutes together as the top pairing there. Sergachev taking the top power play. He's got 3 assists in 4 games. Dursey had the 2 assists in 4 games from the second power play unit. Neither of them had great underlying numbers, I will say. But yeah, if Dursey misses any time I don't think Sergachev is going to get more. Like he's at 26 and a half average time on ice. So he's absolutely getting leaned on. I'm actually kind of feeling about Sergachev a little bit the way that we had with Noah Dobson last year, where Dobson out of nowhere was getting 26 minutes a night and it led to a 70-point season for Noah Dobson. 70 points? Kind of just spitballing that number, but I'm pretty sure that's somewhere around where Noah Dobson ended up with. Maybe that was a point pace. I'm going to have to look this up, otherwise I'm going to bother myself. Yeah, 70 points. Exactly 70 points in 79 games. There you go. Memory is better than I give it credit for. But that could be Sergachev this year. We're seeing that Utah, today's game notwithstanding, has some offensive firepower this year, and Sergachev could be a big time beneficiary of that if he continues to skate ridiculous minutes like this. So, pretty excited about Sergachev if he's going to get these kind of crazy minutes. Moving over to Steven Stamkos, only played 2 games so far there. Nashville has no points to show for it, but 21 minutes average time on ice. Love to see that. The underlying numbers look good. 9th in the league in individual shot attempts per 60. The on-ice numbers are insane. 3rd in Corsi for per 60. 2nd in scoring chances for per 60. This is as good as you could have hoped for if you had Steven Stamkos coming in. I know that the point production isn't there, but everything under the hood looks amazing. So yeah, I'm all in on, well, all in as much as you can be after 2 games. This is really good returns for Steven Stamkos, and they're really going, even though the points haven't been there. So yeah, I don't know how much to weigh whether it'll continue or not. Like I do think that 21 minutes is not going to be what Stamkos gets for the rest of the year, but definitely if he's going to be an 18, 19, even pushing 20-minute a night player for Nashville, then he's going to exceed the projection I had for him by a fair margin. Igor Chinakhov showing up here, has a goal and 4 points in 2 games, averaging over 19 and a quarter minutes per night. That's good stuff. 50th in shots per 60, 22nd in on-ice scoring chances for per 60. A couple of good underlying numbers popping up there. Chinakhov is getting prioritized, and I think it's worth the pickup. You got to see what's going on here. Even if it's only a hot streak, like a hot streak that carries you for 2 or 3 weeks is worth having on your roster, right? And it doesn't hurt to find out, and maybe it develops into something more. He's had stretches where the underlying numbers have, snuck up, and he's popped up on my radar. They've always faded in the past. Still a young player, so maybe there's another level to give here where he could, just get to a new level and kind of a plateau and stay there. I'm not discounting that possibility. So Chinakhov, pretty exciting given the extreme deployment he's been seeing as of late. Matvei Michkov, 1 assist in his 2 games to start his career here in the NHL. 18 and a half minutes. That stuff's pretty good. Underlying numbers not so hot. 159th in shots per 60, 235th in individual scoring chances for per 60. On-ice numbers are a little better. 71st in Corsi for per 60 and 66th in scoring chances for per 60. I think everybody got pretty hypey about Michkov based on the preseason. When the switch flips and you get into the actual season, oftentimes these rookies find it's a little bit of a different game, and it takes a little while for them to adjust. So I'm not shocked by this at all. It doesn't really change anything about how I viewed Michkov. I thought he was probably a 55 to 60 point player in his first season here. That really hasn't changed for me. Although it is nice, I will say, to see the time on ice being so high. Again, it's John Tortorella, so I don't trust it. I don't think that just because he's got 18 and a half minutes in the first 2 games here, that's going to continue for the full season. It seems like that is never something you can rely on with Tortorella. But it's a good sign nonetheless. Definitely better than I'm seeing 12 minutes, that's for sure. So the last one here that I had on the list is Brock Nelson. 1 assist in his 2 games, 18 and a half minutes time on ice, but crucially losing the top power play as of right now to Siplikov. That's not where we wanted to be. That's for sure. So the shots per 60 here, 114th. That's okay. 62nd in shot attempts per 60. On ice numbers are pretty good. 30th in Corsi for per 60, 48th in scoring chances for per 60. But without the top power play, I do think it really hampers Brock Nelson's value. Brock Nelson has been one of the better values in drafts for the last number of years, but I was kind of scared off when I saw that, yeah, there's this potential that he wasn't going to be on the top power play unit this year. And I'm still pretty scared off by the fact that we're now a couple games in and doesn't seem like that's changing anytime soon. So, yeah, I don't think Brock Nelson is any kind of sell low or buy low at the moment. I just think he is probably a bit more of a 60-point player than the 70-point player that he's pushed towards in the last number of years. Yeah, as long as he's not on the top power play. If he gets back on the top power play, then obviously the ceiling raises. But yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. I will say, like, if Siplakov is all that, then that does raise Brock Nelson's potential perhaps at even strength, because Siplakov has been playing on his line with Palmieri. So maybe that's a positive that you can put in Nelson's corner, and that kind of counterbalances the lack of power play deployment just a little bit. But overall, I think you have to view this as a bit of a downgrade for Brock Nelson in the early going. Justin says, I'm in the 18-man fantasy tip league. Worth grabbing Seamus Casey for a stream. He dug in today. I mean, you can. I find it hard to believe that Casey's going to really keep this going, to be quite honest. It's a great story. It's a great start. It just feels to me like we see this pretty often, and it rarely continues. Like the average time on ice for Casey here. What did I do there? Scroll down. Yeah, it just feels like the average time on ice here being 12:25. That's just not something that really lends itself to a lot of scoring. I will say the individual scoring chance for per 60 rank is pretty nice, but we have to see more minutes. We have to see more minutes before we can get all that excited about it. Yeah, I just can't really get behind a player who's not seeing any kind of minutes. That's really hard to deal with. Today was 14:09. That's a little bit better, but still, I can't get behind a power play 2 guy seeing 14:09. We got to see more than that before I can get excited. That's my take there. Jordan says, question about the Apples and Genos Patreon. Is the player evaluation tool similar to the spreadsheet where it shows these kinds of metrics? Yes, this is basically a version of that. So yeah, I can kind of demo it here. It pulls from all these sheets that I have in here, but also it's got this here. Zoom out so this is actually visible. But basically, you just enter the player's name at the top here, and it spits out last 5 games and their season numbers, and it'll compare the two. Obviously, at this point in the season, everything looks kind of the same. Also gives you 82-game goal paces and point paces, but you can kind of compare their last 5 games to their season-long numbers and see if they're kind of outperforming their season numbers or how things are going. I also have this tool where you can kind of compare 2 players side by side and just see, especially if you're trying to make an ad, right? You're trying to see, maybe you're trying to see Nikolai Kovalenko versus Callum Ritchie. You could have been looking at that for a pickup for this week. You could see something like that, and you could look at these 2 guys side by side. You could see that Ritchie had more time on ice. He had better shots for 60 numbers. Maybe you want to go that way, but if you thought maybe Kovalenko with the top line deployment was going to continue, maybe you go Kovalenko's way, but that's what the sheet is for the patrons. That's in the Apples tier, the $8 tier and above. So if you're interested in that, you can definitely check it out. Heather says, hey Nate, not sure if you mentioned Heiskanen or Carlson droppable for Seth Jones. I don't think I would. Heiskanen has never been a player that I've been like excited about for fantasy. He doesn't have great peripherals, and so if your league has any kind of significant weight for that, then obviously that's a tough place to be in. But he's skating almost 25 minutes a night. It's just that the points haven't quite come yet. I don't think that continues. I think he gets in there. The on-ice shooting percentage is still high. He just hasn't gotten what he normally gets in terms of a percentage of those goals going in, and I think that'll come. So I think Heiskanen, his points will come, and I would take Heiskanen over Seth Jones, unless maybe in a bangers cats you could look at Seth Jones, but I still think in almost every case I'm taking Miro Heiskanen over Seth Jones. I know Seth Jones has had a nice little start here, and I do like that. But I don't think when we add it all up at the end of the season, maybe in a bangers cats, Seth Jones outperforms Miro Heiskanen rest of season. But yeah, there's also a pretty good chance that Heiskanen, goes off for 70 points, and Seth Jones just doesn't have that in his wheelhouse, in my opinion. I asked also about Carlson, so I can throw that in here as well. Carlson down at 21 minutes. The underlying numbers are pretty solid, actually. That one's a little closer for me, just because, yeah, the time on ice is a little bit lower there. But I think I would still take Erik Karlsson at this point, again, unless it's a Bangers Cats, in which case I could be a little bit more persuaded about Seth Jones. Yeah, you can let me know if it is Bangers Cats and we can try to hash it out a little bit more. But I think in normal points formats, I'm still Heiskanen, greater sign, Karlsson, greater sign, Jones. Wob says, your thoughts on Brady Shea's debut in Nashville? Honestly, I didn't really check in on Shea specifically. I didn't end up with them anywhere. I mean, shots per 60, looking pretty hot there. Second amongst all defensemen. Obviously, only 2 games, 20 minutes. Yeah, I think that's fine. Good debut for Shea. I think he probably should be able to do pretty similarly to what he did in Carolina. I think he's going to have a similar role in Nashville, and he should be able to replicate similar numbers in most cases. Last one says, it's a little insane, but thoughts on dropping Patty Kane for Pospisil or Chinakhov in a Bangers League? Yeah, I think I'm looking for a different route there for myself. I still find it hard to not believe in Patrick Kane. He looked fine last year. He's got an assist in the game here tonight already. I believe he's playing on that line with Dylan Larkin again. I'll double check that to fact check myself, but he has been playing on the top power play, obviously. Yeah, he's right now the top line is Larkin, Kane, DeBrincat, with Raymond going down to the second line. And so that's obviously a nice spot for Kane. I don't think I'm willing to drop Kane for Pospisil or Chinakhov, to be honest. Thoughts on Arvidsson? We can throw him in here and check that out. Arvidsson's got nothing going in the 3 games here, just over 15 and a half minutes time on ice. The underlying numbers are not kind to Arvidsson there for sure. They did kind of mess around with the lines a little bit, it seemed like, in the last game there for Edmonton. And obviously things have not been going that well. Yeah, it was RNH, Arvidsson, and Jeff Skinner as a line towards the end of the game. Yeah, it's not a player that I'm like super excited about. That's for sure. Similar to Jeff Skinner. I just think he kind of is what he is. I'll double check what my projection was for him, but I think it'll probably be similar to what I thought at the start of the season. I don't think much has changed for me. 23 goals, 46 points was my projection for Arvidsson this year, and I'd still probably hold right around there. I projected him for 15 minutes on the dot. He's at just over 15 and a half. So yeah, feeling pretty solid about that at the moment. Nate has thoughts on Norris versus Hayton. That's a good question. Obviously, Josh Norris had a nice day today, but Barrett Hayton has had a few nice days before the game today. Underlying numbers are definitely kinder to Hayton, but Norris has actually been getting more time on ice and seems to be heating up a little bit here. That's a tough one. Yeah, it's a very legitimate question. I feel like Hayton's role is a little bit more locked in, and so I might lean that way at the moment. Yeah, I think that's the way I would lean at the moment, but I think that it's pretty close between the two, in my estimation. Yeah, the 19 minutes a night for Josh Norris and the early returns. He's on the top power play. He's a shot monster on the power play, which is obviously something that you want out of your fantasy players. So that part feels pretty good as well. Barrett Hayton only played 14:37 in the game today. They actually really spread out the ice time in this game. Nick Schmaltz had the most amongst all forwards at 17:52. This is definitely a bit of a weird game. They spent a lot of time shorthanded. Yeah, that is a weird outcome for sure. I don't really know what to make of that overall, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think I lean Hayton still, but Norris and Hayton, yeah, same tier, I guess I would say. Huango asks, are we in on LaFerriere? I think you have to be, at least for the time being, especially if the cost to acquire is just a waiver ad. yeah, you should definitely make that happen. He had 5 shots, 2 goals in the game, 5 minutes of power play time, 17 minutes total. Good stuff from Laferriere today. It's a good week to roster him with the off nights and the 4 games that Kings had. So hopefully you've made that ad and you're already reaping the benefits. Michael O'Brien, are you still buying on Matthews with any player not named McDavid or McKinnon? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, probably for the next 5 years, I'll be buying on Matthews with any player not named McDavid or McKinnon. So that's where I'm at on that. All right. I think we made it to the end here. So I think that's going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you see and you've heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.